Hi, my name is Yulia, and by now I'm hopefully your favorite childless, miserable cat or bulldog lady, and this is the News Brief. Here we catch up with 4 to 6 news stories every other day that I personally pick out and find, in my humble opinion, to be the most impactful. Then we discuss them in the comments, so you don't have to suffer alone, and I don't have to suffer alone. And I will ask you for the next couple of episodes at least, because it's a new segment, to please ask me questions down under this video and give your suggestions, because I would love to tailor this show to your interests and curiosities and provide you with answers in the upcoming episodes. Let's dive in. I wanted to start this episode with a bit of an unplanned intrusion from myself. This weekend, the world was shook by a video posted by Russians who were gloating over a dismemberment of a Ukrainian prisoner of war. In fact, gloating so bad that they posted a video cutting off his head, his limbs, and other body parts of his, taking multiple pictures and uploading them online. Unfortunately, or fortunately, we cannot show you what that looked like on air, but I'm sure if you'd like to find it, you could do so on Twitter. If you have a sensitive stomach, I would not recommend it. Personally, I can't look at it. But the reason why I wanted to mention it here is because these types of things are done by Russia systematically, and we are letting them happen, and we are letting them get away with it. And both Russia and the United Nations, who created the Geneva Convention, seem to absolutely not care for these rules and regulations. They gloat about war crimes they commit. So I am imploring you to contact your representatives in different countries, wherever it is that you are watching from, and put pressure on them, to put pressure on the UN to punish Russia for all of these horrendous crimes against humanity that they have been committing on Ukrainian land since more recently 2022, but in reality since 2014. Do whatever you can, because this cannot keep happening. Now, this is going to be a very strange segue, because we're going from something very tragic to something that I consider quite inspirational, which is Donald Trump is having a hell of a week, and I am living for it. Living for it. There is a lot to discuss here, so let's start from the least impactful one. A YouTube channel where he praises all things far-right, fascist, and propaganda, likes to spread a lot of really bad and false narratives for Russia, has said that it's obvious at this point that Donald Trump has no chance at winning this election.
I feel like we are in this very bizarre time where people are giving in to the bullshit in a way that I never suspected people would before. And this is one, they just want no Trump no matter what, and they're willing to gaslight themselves to think that. And by the way, I think Hillary could win. If Hillary jumped back in...
I've been saying that for months.
Yikes. If that wasn't bad enough, which, I mean, your biggest stan literally losing faith in you, there is a whole lot more coming. Here's a clip of Trump being booed off stage at the Libertarian National Convention about 15 minutes into his speech. As we all know, usually his speeches are about an hour to 2 hours long. The crowd is cheering. MAGA loves him. Well, this was 30 minutes, and the speech itself was about 10 to 15, as I said, and his whole entire stage presence was 30 minutes tops. And honestly, it's such a great watch, because he looks incredibly pissed off, and the crowd isn't having it. That's what happens when you step out of your MAGA bubble. And this clip has recently resurfaced, probably because it's quite trendy to show Donald Trump's lowest moments these days.
The Libertarian Party should nominate Trump for President of the United States. Whoa. That's nice. That's nice. Only if you want to win. Only if you want to win. Maybe you don't want to win.
Next up, and this was a huge blow, this was his interview at the National Association of Black Journalists Convention, or conference, where he stood absolutely no chance against Rachel Scott, a profound journalist who asked him very tough, yet very fair questions that we have all been dying to ask, but couldn't. Members of the nation's largest group for black journalists were still grappling with the tension created by Trump's Wednesday interview in which he made false claims about Vice President Kamala Harris's race and repeatedly insulted ABC News correspondent Rachel Scott after she asked him tough questions about his past attacks on black people, wrote the Associated Press. And here are some of the snippets of this interview, and I highly recommend you look it up and watch it.
A lot of people did not think it was appropriate for you to be here today. You have pushed false claims about some of your rivals, from Nikki Haley to former President Barack Obama, saying that they were not born in the United States, which is not true. You have told 4 congresswomen of color who were American citizens to go back to where they came from. You have used words like animal and rabbit to describe black district attorneys. You've attacked black journalists, calling them a loser, saying the questions that they ask are, quote, stupid and racist. You've had dinner with a white supremacist at your Mar-a-Lago resort. So my question, sir, now that you are asking black supporters to vote for you, why should black voters trust you after you have used language like that?
Well, first of all, I don't think I've ever been asked a question so in such a horrible manner, a first question. You don't even say, hello, how are you? Are you with ABC? Because I think they're a fake news network, a terrible network. And I think it's disgraceful that I came here in good spirit. I love the black population of this country. I've done so much for the black population of this country. I have been the best president for the black population since Abraham Lincoln. That's my answer.
Better than President Johnson, who signed the Voting Rights Act.
For you to start off a question and answer period, especially when you're 35 minutes late because you couldn't get your equipment to work, in such a hostile manner, I think it's a disgrace.
Trump was hoping that he would go to this interview and he would question Kamala Harris's race and her identity, and he would come out on top of it. Instead, the floor was really wiped with him by a very strong, very passionate, very knowledgeable black woman.
Some of your own supporters, including Republicans on Capitol Hill, have labeled Vice President Kamala Harris, who is the first black and Asian American woman to serve as vice president and be on a major party ticket, as a DEI hire. Is that acceptable language to you? And will you tell those Republicans and those supporters to stop it?
How do you define DEI? Go ahead. How do you define
diversity, equity, inclusion?
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Is that what your definition?
That is
give me a
literally
definition
the words
then. Would you give me a definition?
DEI.
Give me a definition.
Sir, I'm asking you a question,
No,
a
you
very
have to
direct
define
question.
it. Define it for me, if you
I
would.
just defined it, sir. Do you believe that Vice President Kamala Harris is only on the ticket because she is a black woman?
Well, I can say no. I think it's maybe a little bit different. So I've known her a long time indirectly, not directly very much. And she was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. So I don't know, is she Indian or is she black?
She is always identified as a black woman. She went to a historically black college.
I respect either one, but she obviously doesn't.
We were later made aware after this interview that Trump insinuated that the reason why it didn't go as smooth as he wanted it to go was because the black journalists were super unprofessional and about an hour late to the interview itself, putting yet another trope on the group. But then it came out that, in fact, it wasn't the journalists who were late. It was Donald Trump himself who was an hour late because he spent 40 minutes backstage demanding not to be fact-checked during the interview. I mean, he's such an honest man. Why would he care if he would be fact-checked, right? Trump's interview was delayed by more than an hour, and at the time, he blamed audio issues for the holdup. The speaker equipment at the NABJ is not working properly. Don't blame me for being late, he posted on Truth Social. The technical issues were apparent during the interview, but Lemon told Axios that they were resolved very quickly, yet Trump still refused to go on stage if he was going to be fact-checked, Lemon said. The bigger problem was his threat to not take the stage when he had agreed to go on. He did not want to be fact-checked, but we could not let him on the stage without fact-checking. I mean, is reasonable, and yet another yikes for Trump because someone finally stood up to him. The reason why I'm using the word yikes so much in this episode is because it's outdated, much like Trump's presidential campaign. Anyway, we aren't quite done yet on this ride. Anthony Scaramucci, who was a former White House communications director during the Trump era, shared some insights on his podcast, The Rest is Politics, with co-host Katie Kay. He alleges that his contacts on the Republican side of the government have let on some information that leads him to believe that Trump might be stepping down, or that the Republican camp is really now not sure of their victory, and furthermore, not even not sure, they're quite sure they're losing. According to Scaramucci, the Republicans absolutely despise Donald Trump and only put up with him because, as a politician would, they want to stay in power. And while his ratings were good, of course they would put up with him. Now that he's polling very low and his ratings are consistently falling in favor of Kamala Harris, they have no reason to put up with his demeanor. Of course, Trump himself is running for office not because he wants to serve the American people, but because he could make a couple of $1 billion while he's in office. And the biggest reason is because he doesn't want to go to jail. He hopes that once he's president, his immunity is going to kick in and he's not going to have to answer for his crimes. So, according to Scaramucci, and according to his contacts back in the Republican camp, if Trump were offered a deal by Biden or Harris or anyone in the government that he would not be going to jail if he dropped out of the race, and he was guaranteed that he can continue playing golf while someone else ruins the country, he would drop out. It's a take, if I've ever heard one. I don't know how true it is because I think Trump's ego would prevent him from dropping out of the race, but I feel like if Republicans were to get too fed up with him, they would force him out. But I guess we have to wait and see because in this type of a political environment, nothing is impossible. You know? We already thought that Joe Biden was never going to step down, and now look at it. Kamala is killing it. Another interesting take from that podcast, which I'm going to show you some of the excerpts of it in a second, was that Trump is likely going to drop J.D. Vance as his running mate sometime around or after the Democratic National Convention. J.D. Vance's popularity rating is negative. And I mean, as we talked about it in the previous episode, that is a first in 20 years for a vice presidential candidate. Mind-blowing, really. How do you screw up that bad? But anyways, he's not liked by MAGA, he's not liked by independents, he's surely not liked by Democrats, and he's not liked by Republicans that don't even like Trump. He's much more radical than him. But anyways, his rating is really, really bad. I would say, in layman's terms, his rating is in the toilet. And Trump already started talking about J.D. Vance in interviews as if he was yesterday's news, so in the past tense. Which is kind of an oopsie for the fact that, J.D. Vance is still his vice president. But Trump moves on very quick.
Do you think J.D. Vance is going to stay in the race?
If Donald Trump stays in the race, I think he keeps J.D. Vance because it's very hard for him to admit he's made a mistake.
I think he comes out of the race. I think Trump has already realized that he's made a mistake. He fires people. And I think remember, he loves attention more than anything else. And I think he's trying to figure out a way, how do I fire this guy after the Democratic National Convention? I'm going to fire him. I'm going to reach out to Nikki Haley. I'm going to reach out to some of these other people because I got to make a calculation here. I'm now running against a woman. Haley's very politically ambitious. Can I get her on the ticket and swap out J.D. Vance and go the last 70 days with Nikki Haley? If I'm Donald Trump and I want to win, he's gone. He's already talking about him like he's yesterday's news, and we wrap fish in yesterday's news. And remember, he just blew up Project 225. And so he's like Tony Soprano. He'll run over you in the gas station. He'll squash your head like a melon. And that's Donald Trump. He'll run these people over. So I think he's out of the race. I know it's a long shot call, but I'm going to say that. I understand why you think he's in the race.
So the idea is that he would likely pick Nikki Haley as his running mate after the Democratic National Convention because, in his mind, that would probably give him an edge on Kamala because Nikki Haley is also a woman of color. I mean, I guess that would be better than J.D. Vance because at this point anything is, but I don't think that would really help his ratings that much, especially about 7 weeks out from the election. It really makes no sense, but hey, Guess you gotta try everything before you fail.
The problem for Donald Trump is he doesn't know how to run an effective campaign when he's behind in the polls. And what's happened in the last 3 seismic weeks in American politics is he's gone from being ahead in all of the polls to starting to slip in some of those swing state polls. He can't figure out how to run a campaign like that.
So I want to test something on you, okay? And I want to get your reaction to it. So we have said, and you've agreed with me, or I've agreed with you, I can't remember who said it first, but we've said he's able to say 2 contradictory things at the same time, simultaneously, and get away with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I now believe that people are getting a little tired of that. And he was able to do that because he was running up against an 81-year-old that was in heavy decline. And so now he's caught in a tongue twister. He can't do the things that he was doing to Joe Biden to Kamala Harris. Do I have that right? Or is he getting caught up?
Yeah.
Or am I missing that?
I think he thinks he's still back in 2015, 2016, when this played well and America is changing. My feeling, and it always has been about Donald Trump, is that the backdrop to a lot of Donald Trump support is that in 2044, America becomes a minority white country. And you have a whole load of white men, in particular men out there, who by virtue of their race and the fact that they have a Y chromosome, have been given historically for centuries a position of power in every society, but in the United States as well. And they can see that power slipping away. Women are starting to earn more than them. They are better educated than them. There are more of them in Congress. God damn it, there might be one of them in the White House soon. And I think that's producing this real fear, which is what gave us Donald Trump elected in 2016. The problem is the country has changed, as we discussed last week. The country has changed since 2016. Those numbers of people who are biracial in America are just one sign of that changing. And people are like, this isn't even interesting anymore. I mean, to your point, this isn't interesting anymore. And I think when Kamala Harris dismissed all of his comments at the Black Journalist Conference as same old show. By the way, I think that word old was very pointed, it was not a mistake that she used the word old in reference to Donald Trump. I think that's the way Democrats handle this. It's sort of boring.
Perhaps the most devastating blow in Trump's life right now is that even his biggest crush and major role model, Vladimir Putin, does not seem to believe in his victory anymore. It doesn't look like he thinks that Trump is going to take office come January 2025. We can see that from the recent POW exchange between Russia and the United States. I'm going to give you some context first. The United States and Russia completed their biggest prisoner swap in post-Soviet history on Thursday, with Moscow releasing journalist Evan Gershkovich and fellow American Paul Whelan, along with dissidents including Vladimir Karamurza, and a multinational deal that set 24 people free. Gershkovich, Whelan, and Alsu Kurmasheva, a journalist with dual US-Russian citizenship, arrived on American soil shortly before midnight for a joyful reunion with their families. President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris also were at Joint Base Andrews in Maryland to greet them and dispense hugs all around. There were also some other Russians that were released in this exchange on our Western American side. The dissidents released included Karamurza, a Kremlin critic and Pulitzer Prize-winning writer serving 25 years on charges of treason, widely seen as politically motivated, as well as multiple associates of Navalny. Freed Kremlin critics included Oleg Orlov, a veteran human rights campaigner convicted of discrediting the Russian military, and Ilya Yashin, imprisoned for criticizing the war in Ukraine. As a Ukrainian reporter and as a Ukrainian person, also as someone who's lived in the United States for 13 years, I am so incredibly disappointed in this, and we're going to get to the Russian side of this exchange in a minute. But I really do want to make a comment. When we talk about the Russian opposition, I wonder what they're opposing, because they're not necessarily opposing the war in Ukraine. They're not opposing Putin's methods. They're opposing Putin because they want to be Putin. And when you look at this exchange, you need to remember that. The second that Karamurza, for instance, Russia's new biggest hope after Navalny's untimely demise, came out of prison, the first thing that he has said is that he's going to dedicate the rest of his life to fighting against the sanctions that were put on Russia because poor Russian people are suffering. He's not talking about, the fact that these sanctions are there in order to prevent Russia from being able to invest that much money into war. He's talking about, the poor Russian people that can't buy Gucci. and the fact that we should be fighting against sanctions, not against Russia, so it stops invading Ukraine, not against Russia because it disrupts literally world's order and peace, but against the sanctions on poor Russia and Russian people. Does that sound like Russian opposition to you, or does that sound like yet another entitled Russian who does not do anything that benefits the civilized society that isn't Russia? That's what it sounds like to me. And if you look at his track record and the track record of every single one of these oppositioners that were released, in reality, they haven't accomplished anything in Russian political scene other than getting imprisoned. That's about it. No change has happened because of them. Meanwhile, Russia really won the lottery on this exchange. The Russian side got Vladimir Krasikov, who was convicted in Germany in 2021 and sentenced to life in prison for killing a former Chechen rebel in a Berlin park 2 years earlier, apparently on the orders of Moscow's security services. Throughout negotiations, Moscow had been persistent in pressing for his release, with Putin himself raising it. Russia also received 2 alleged sleeper agents jailed in Slovenia, as well as 3 men charged by federal authorities in the United States, including Roman Seleznyov, a convicted computer hacker and the son of a Russian lawmaker, and Vladimir Konashchenak, a suspected Russian intelligence operative accused of providing American-made electronics and ammunition to the Russian military. Norway returned an academic arrested on suspicion of being a Russian spy. Poland sent back a man it detained on espionage charges. Tell me how this is a really great exchange. And there is this rhetoric that anyone who doesn't agree with this exchange being amazing is just playing into the Republican propaganda because, the world is focused on the American election. Biden negotiated a really bad deal. And it's okay. First of all, Biden's camp is leaving. We are now moved on to the new shiny candidate who's actually amazing. And it's okay. Even if you like someone, if you like a president, you agree with them, you agree with their policies, you can still admit to their mistakes. Here is what really happened in this exchange. Yes, we got a couple of Americans back that Putin did not want to exchange because it's his ace of spades bargaining card with the United States, which he used, right? But we also got useless Russian opposition that factually is useless. They did not accomplish anything. They're not going to accomplish anything. They're not going to be accomplishing anything within Russia. And they're not going to be helping Ukraine or the world by any means. They're going to be, in their own words, advocating to lift sanctions off of Russia. What a fantastic gain we've made. But what has Russia gained? Russia gained spies. Russia gained hitmen that actually succeeded and have done a lot of really terrible things that have disrupted the West, that have caused issues in the West, that have killed useful political figures. So this is not a good, nor is it an even exchange. Russia won the lottery, and we screwed up. And it's okay to admit that Biden screwed up. We didn't need to exchange those Russian political prisoners that, in reality, do not provide anything to the world other than Russian apologism. However, as I mentioned a little earlier, Putin didn't want this deal to happen because he still wanted to keep his 2 little bargaining chips in the face of American journalists. Why did he agree to this deal today? It seems like he doesn't think that Trump is going to be in office. If Trump was going to come to office, he knows he'd be getting the best deals and everything he wants. Now that it looks like Harris is going to win, he probably wanted to do this deal sooner than later because he knows that she's going to be tougher on Russia than the Biden's administration was. Why? As I spoke in the previous episode, her rumored national security advisor, Philip Gordon, actually wanted to start Cold War with Russia in 2018, understanding exactly the type of threat that they pose to the world. So yeah, all in all, it looks like no one believes in Trump's victory anymore, not even Putin. Yikes. Since we're talking about Russia, a country in its former sphere of influence found itself in hot waters today, and that country is Georgia. Well, rather the country is known to you as Georgia, but it should be known to you as Sakartvelo, which is the real name of Georgia. Why is it called Georgia in English and Gruzia in some other languages? Well, because Russia designated it to be called that way. Their real name is Sakartvelo. And you know what? If you adapt and change to calling it by its real name, you're gonna avoid this awkward situation. Hey, where'd you get that? Oh, in Georgia. Oh, the state? No, Georgia, the country. You're no longer going to have to do that thing. Isn't that convenient? I think it's convenient. The United States is suspending more than $95 million in aid to Georgia due to the anti-democratic actions and false statements of the Georgian government, which are incompatible with the norms of EU and NATO membership, Secretary of State Antony Blinken announced. While we're suspending our assistance to the government of Georgia, the United States will continue to support programs and activities that benefit the people of Georgia by strengthening democracy, the rule of law, independent media, and economic development. We will remain loyal to the Georgian people and their Euro-Atlantic aspirations, Blinken added. The reason why this is happening is because Georgia's government is incredibly pro-Russian, and I would go as far as to say they are Russian puppets, while Georgian people, as Antony Blinken pointed out, have a lot of European aspirations, and they don't want to have anything to do with Russia. So the government put forth a law about foreign agents and their impact, a law that mimics a little too close one that was put out in Russia. And it's supposed to uncover foreign agents and their influences, but in reality what this law does is it severely limits the freedoms of Georgian people and also limits the freedoms of independent media, or really cuts off their funding and makes them shut down so they can control the narrative. Convenient. What the United States is really saying is a very nice slap in the face to that government, saying, hey, we're no longer going to be funding you, but here's what we are going to fund. We're going to fund every single thing that you guys are trying to bankrupt in your country. We're going to fund and hope to develop every single democratic movement that you are trying to shut down. And that's how we're going to deal with you. And that's a hell of a fight to put up. I'm proud, the US. You did something very well. For once. Well, not for once, but you know what I'm saying. Meanwhile, China has outdone itself in covertly undermining Ukraine. China bans export of all civilian drones that can be used in war. According to the Associated Press, China has announced a ban on the export of all civilian drones that could be used in warfare. Additionally, some functions of other drones will be limited. These changes are set to take effect on September 1st. So, DJI Mavic 3 Pro drones are some of the most requested drones at the Ukrainian front. This is drone warfare. This is 2024. This is the future, if you will. And I don't mean to sound mocking as I'm doing it, but it just sounds so crazy that we live in the world where drone warfare is a thing. But it is, and it is one of the most important parts of this particular war. It helps Ukrainians to get into the enemy's rear, find out information, it does reconnaissance, it helps us spy on Russians and defend our territories. So as I said prior, DJI Mavic 3 Pro drones are incredibly important, and I wish I could say that they have, you know, some other drone, not from China, that is good enough to be its equal competitor, but they don't. These are the best drones, and these are the drones that the guys and the girls at the front need and want, and these are the ones they're used to working with. Ukraine is working on alternatives, but obviously it's going to take time, and production capacity compared to China, a very different deal. Anyways, so China is going to be banning the import into Ukraine, well, export from China, of these drones because they can be used in war. Now, of course, there's going to be a black market, and of course, these drones are still going to be making it to the front lines, but it's going to be incredibly harder, it's going to be longer, and it's going to be costlier. And the worst part of all of it is, do you remember that part of limiting functionality? Well, what they're actually limiting in the functionality is the thermal lenses. So thermal drones are going to be no longer. Those are the drones where at night you can see people and other things based on their body heat. So those drones are incredibly important for nighttime reconnaissance. And I would say they're probably even more widely used than regular drones because you usually do reconnaissance at night when the enemy can't see you that easily. So yeah, China is really, really doing that specifically, I think, personally, in my opinion, to aid Russia in that, because we all know China's close to Russia. I doubt there's going to be any issues buying the drones, crossing the border back into Russia with them, putting them on the railroad and bringing them to the Russian front line. So yeah, thanks, China. What a really nice move for you. A week full of surprises did not pass by the Ukrainian president either. He did really surprise the entirety of Ukraine, and I want to say the world, probably. He said in his latest statement that Ukraine is open to Russia's participation in the Second Summit on Peace in Ukraine. He stated that most countries around the world support Russia's participation in the Second Summit on Peace in Ukraine. As a result, Ukraine cannot be against this initiative. Can it not be? Because we have been against this initiative this whole time, because does paperwork signed with Russia actually ever means anything? Let's think about the Chechen War, Moldova, Georgia, Ukraine in 2014, the Minsk agreements that trolls love to use against us so much. But anyways, I digress. He also said in an interview with Le Monde that any issue regarding the territorial integrity of Ukraine cannot be resolved by the president alone and requires the will of Ukrainian people. I am going to read you a quote that has been making rounds on the internet, gaining virality for all the wrong reasons because it was taken out of context. Here it is. A referendum? This is what the Ukrainian people should want. I will say frankly, this is not the best option, because we are dealing with Putin, and it will be a victory for him if he seizes part of our territory, Zelenskyy stated. So, people took it as if he was saying that, we might have a referendum on whether we want to return Crimea and Donbass to Ukraine, which just makes no sense because a lot of people from Crimea and from Donbass are still, first of all, trapped there. Second of all, they can't vote because, they have been murdered at the front by Russia. They are externally displaced, so they are refugees somewhere. There is a lot of issues with that. But in reality, what he meant to say, or what he was actually saying if you read the full article, is that if there was ever a decision on whether to seize territories to Russia, that decision would not be made by him because he's merely the president representing the Ukrainian people, not making decisions for them. So it would have to be a referendum among Ukrainian people. But he also stressed that this is not a good solution, and that Russia would just rearm, regroup, and come back, and they would get exactly what they want. It's a little strange to hear that rhetoric coming out of his mouth because, we have been screaming to the world for the past 2.5 years that this is not a way it could go and not a way it should go, and nobody should be rewarding Russia with territories for invading a sovereign state illegally and committing all of these war crimes and killing all of these people and, bombing our cities almost on a daily basis. And I digress a lot in this episode, but what can you do when you have a lot to say? So it's very strange to hear that, but I will say, since it was last week, and it was when Kamala Harris just started gaining momentum within the presidential campaign, I think what Zelenskyy is trying to do is he's trying to prepare for a Trump presidency if it does happen. And he's trying to prepare for a situation in which there will have to be a negotiation, because we all know that Trump cannot wait to surrender Ukraine to Russia. Because we haven't forgotten this clip, have we?
If I were president, and I say this, I will end that war in one day. It'll take 24 hours. I know Zelenskyy well. I know Putin well. I would get that ended in a period of 24
You can break that deal.
100%. It would be easy. That deal would be easy. A lot of it has to do with the money. A lot of it has to do with the military, we're giving. But I would get that deal done within 24 hours. That war has to be stopped.
So I do think it's a smart move, but it is a very disheartening, chilling thing to hear from your president as a Ukrainian. He acknowledged that liberating all territories through force and weapons costs us a lot of time and human lives. Therefore, he suggested that we can return our territories through diplomatic means. Again, another quote that made a lot of Ukrainians very angry and a lot of people around the world very confused, because we have been saying that there can be no negotiations with Russia. And there can be. I think a lot of these things are sort of taken out of context in a way, politically speaking, because what they really mean is that, of course, there is going to have to be a diplomatic solution at the end of the day, after Ukraine destroys Russia militarily or takes away Crimea or does something after which Russia really cannot continue fighting anymore. There will have to be a solution that is discussed and signed and seen through. And I think that's sort of where we're going with this, not a, hey, we're going to negotiate with Russia tomorrow, give them our territories and end the war. And I think that if there is this rhetoric coming out, then Zelenskyy and the Western world might have an ace of spades to negotiate with Russia, because it would make no sense for the war to end or freeze, because again, everybody knows that Russia is going to just rearm, get better, and come back, and Europe is arming because they know the danger Russia poses. So it doesn't look like the war is going anywhere in a sense of, we're just going to sign a piece of paper and everybody is going to go home happy and Europe is just going to celebrate not having to help Ukraine anymore. I think it's more so that we are preparing for a phase of war in which Russia is going to be given ultimatums, in my humble opinion. Anyways, this is a surprise, but you know what isn't a surprise anymore? And this is something I get asked about, I want to say every day. If I had a penny for every single time that I've been asked about this topic in the past year or so, I would probably be able to fund a couple of very nifty military vehicles for our armed forces. And that topic is F-16s. And they're no longer a mystery. They're in Ukraine, and we know that based on lots of videos that appeared online before they were supposed to, that were showing them flying in our skies, and a very badass speech by Volodymyr Zelenskyy on an unrelated topic, literally standing in front of an F-16 fighter jet. Take a look.
It's a moment Ukrainians have long waited for. F-16 jets flying in the skies above their heads. Ukraine previously operated Soviet-era jets, but they were limited by Russia's far better air capabilities. The F-16s will boost Ukraine's military strength and upgrade its air defences.
And on this very positive note, this is all I have for you for today, unfortunately, or fortunately, because on the one hand, this was a very full news week, but also a lot of this news was really unpleasant. And I don't know about you, but I did not want to compile more of it. I will see you in a couple of days, but in the meanwhile, please like this channel, send it to a friend, don't forget to comment and give me your suggestions because I will be reading them. And do subscribe to The Gaze, G-A-Z-E, not The Gaze. I mean, although if you do subscribe to The Gaze, power to ya. Anyways, I will see you in a couple of days, and thank you for watching, and I'm really hoping that you will be leaving those comments because I will be reading them.